The diagnosis came on a typical Tuesday in April. Breast cancer. Stage 2. Detected relatively early, the doctor said in a tone meant to be reassuring. Good chances of complete remission. Sitting in the office, I just nodded. Ricardo held my hand, squeezing it as if trying to give me some strength, but his fingers were cold, almost as cold as mine. We will start with surgery to remove the tumor, followed by radiotherapy, continued Dr. Paula. Maybe chemotherapy, depending on what we find. Sophia? The doctor's voice brought me back. Do you have any questions? I had thousands, but at that moment, none seemed important enough. I just shook my head. I do, Ricardo intervened. How long will the whole treatment last? It depends on the body's response, but we estimate 4 to 6 months. And what about the physical changes? He asked, clearing his throat. Hair? Weight? That kind of thing? Dr. Paula tilted her head slightly. With localized radiotherapy, hair loss will be minimal or non-existent. There may be fatigue, changes in the treated area's skin. As for weight, there may be gain or loss, depending on how the body reacts. Ricardo nodded, his eyes fixed on the notepad where the doctor had drawn. Not in my eyes, not on my face, not on me. That night, lying in bed, he stayed on his side, inches apart that felt like miles. We pretended to read, words dancing meaninglessly before our eyes. Are you scared? I finally asked. He took a while to answer. Of course. We are all scared in the face of the unknown. Of the unknown, I repeated softly. Not of cancer, not of losing you. Of the unknown. Generic. Distant. Richard closed the tablet and turned to me. For the first time that day, he truly looked into my eyes. We will get through this, Sophia. You are strong. I smiled weakly. We are strong, I corrected. He hesitated for a second. Yes, we are. Then he leaned over and kissed me on the forehead, like one kisses a child, before turning off his light. I stayed awake for hours, allowing the tears to come. I wasn't crying because of the diagnosis, though it was scary enough. I cried for something I had seen in Richard's eyes when he asked about the physical changes. A glimpse of what? Apprehension? Disgust? The following weeks were a blur of tests, appointments, preparation for surgery. Richard was with me through it all, always physically present, always on time. He organized the bills, prepared a calendar, called Beatrice, our daughter, explaining the situation. At no point, however, did he really touch me, not in an intimate way. His hugs were quick, almost formal. At night, he stayed on his side of the bed, as if there were an invisible line he couldn't cross. The surgery took place on a Thursday, a partial, conservative mastectomy, as Dr. Paula called it. I woke up confused, in pain, but relieved to have gotten through that stage. Richard was by my side when I opened my eyes, holding a glass of water with a straw. How do you feel? He asked, helping me take a sip. Like a train ran over me, I replied, my voice still hoarse. He gave a faint smile. The doctor said everything went well. They managed to remove all the visible tumor. 2 weeks after the surgery, I had my follow-up appointment. Richard took the morning off to take me. Dr. Paula announced that we could proceed to the next phase of treatment. We'll start radiation therapy next week, she said. It will be 5 weeks of daily sessions, Monday through Friday. Every day? Ricardo asked, visibly concerned. How long is each session? The session itself is quick, usually less than 15 minutes. But considering the preparation time, waiting, it can take 1 to 2 hours a day. I saw Ricardo's face tense up. 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, for 5 weeks. I can go by taxi, I offered quickly, or by Uber. You don't need to worry about taking me every day. Dr. Paula and Ricardo looked at me simultaneously with different expressions. She, surprised. He, relieved. I'll accompany you to the first session, of course, Ricardo hastily said. Then we can take turns. Me, my mother, maybe a friend of yours. I agreed with a polite smile, but something inside me broke a little more. The ease with which Ricardo was delegating me to others, the way the illness seemed to be turning me from a wife into a commitment on his schedule. 2. The day of the first radiotherapy session dawned gray and cold. I woke up before the alarm after a restless night's sleep. Ricardo was already up, having coffee in the kitchen when I left the bedroom. "Good morning," he said. "Did you sleep well?" "So-so," I replied, pouring myself some coffee. "I'm nervous," he nodded, returning his attention to the newspaper. "Natural. The first time is always the hardest. After that, it becomes routine. Routine. Like brushing your teeth or taking the subway to work. As if irradiating my body to kill cancer cells was just another everyday task." Mrs. Celia, my mother-in-law, who had been living with us to help since the surgery, entered the kitchen, already dressed and ready for the day. "Good morning, dear," she said, kissing my cheek. "I made that tea you like. I thought maybe coffee wasn't good before the treatment." "Thanks, Celia," I replied, feeling a wave of gratitude for her genuine concern. But the doctor said I could maintain my normal diet. At the hospital, a friendly nurse handed me a form to fill out and an identification bracelet. While I was filling in the information, Ricardo sat next to me, fiddling with his cell phone. "Mr. Andrade is calling," he said, showing me the screen. "It's about the project. I need to take this call." "Sure," I responded automatically, continuing to fill out the form. Ricardo stood up and took a few steps away, speaking softly on the phone. I finished filling out the form and tried to put on the identification bracelet, but my fingers were trembling slightly. The nurse noticed my difficulty and came closer to help. "The first time is always the hardest," she commented kindly. "Don't worry, we'll take good care of you." I thanked her with a weak smile. Ricardo finally ended the call and came back to my side, his face tense. "Sofia Almeida?" called a voice, and I stood up almost with a jump. Ricardo stood up more slowly, following me to the counter where a middle-aged woman wearing a white coat was waiting for us. "I am Technician Marta," she introduced herself. "I'll be accompanying you during today's session. Your husband can wait here or in the waiting room." I looked at Ricardo, hoping he would say he preferred to accompany me as far as it was allowed. Instead, he hesitated, glancing at his watch. "I think it's better to wait here," he finally said, "unless you need me to go with you." Technician Marta glanced back and forth between us. Many companions prefer to wait here. The preparation room is quite small. I swallowed hard, feeling a lump form in my throat. "It's okay. You can wait here," I said to Ricardo. "It shouldn't take too long." He nodded, clearly relieved. "I'll be here when you're done." I followed the technique Marta down a white corridor, trying to control the feeling of abandonment. Ricardo was just waiting in the waiting room, like any normal companion would. There was no reason for me to feel so deeply alone at that moment. I put on the hospital gown, feeling vulnerable with the thin fabric partially covering my back. Marta led me to the treatment room, dominated by a large machine in the center and a narrow table beneath it. Dr. Luciana, the radiotherapist, began to explain how the treatment would work, showing the machine, the table where I would lie down, how the radiation would be directed to the affected area. "Any questions before we start?" she asked. I hesitated for a moment. "Will it hurt?" She smiled understandingly. "No, it won't hurt. You won't feel anything during the procedure. It's like taking an X-ray." I lay down on the table as instructed, and the doctor and the technician left for the control room. I was alone, looking at the white ceiling and the imposing machine above me. "Let's start, Sophia," came Marta's voice over the intercom. "Breathe normally and try to stay as still as possible. It will only last a few minutes." The machine started to move, emitting a low hum. I closed my eyes, trying to control my breathing. My mind wandered to Ricardo, sitting in the waiting room, probably answering emails on his phone. When I returned to the reception, Ricardo was standing looking at the corridor. "Everything okay?" he asked, approaching. "Yes," I replied. It was quick and painless, as promised. He seemed genuinely relieved. "Great. Shall we go home then?" On the way to the car, Ricardo commented, "I was thinking, maybe it's not necessary for me to come to all the sessions. Now that we know how it works, you could come by Uber as you suggested. It would save us time." I looked at him, feeling something break inside me. It wasn't an unexpected suggestion. I had offered that option myself. But hearing Ricardo formulate it so easily, so quickly after the first session, confirmed what I already suspected. He wanted distance. Distance from me, distance from the disease. "Of course," I replied, looking out the window. "It makes sense." "Great," he smiled, clearly satisfied. "I can arrange with the transportation company we use at the office. They are reliable." When we got home, Mrs. Celia greeted us at the door, eager to know how the session had gone. I answered her questions mechanically, while I watched Ricardo head straight to the office, murmuring something about urgent emails. "Do you want to rest a little, dear?" asked Celia, noticing my tiredness. "I made that soup you like. I think I'll take a bath first," I replied. "Thank you, Celia." In the bathroom, I undressed slowly, this time forcing myself to look in the mirror. The woman staring back at me seemed like a stranger, thinner, paler, with deep dark circles. My eyes traveled down to the scar on my left breast, still red and prominent. The small pen marks made by Dr. Luciana contrasted with my pale skin. That's when I allowed myself to cry, not for the cancer, not for the pain, not for the fear of death. I cried for Ricardo's look, or rather, for the absence of it, for the way he avoided touching me, as if I were contagious. When I finished the bath and returned to the bedroom, I found Ricardo sitting on the bed, apparently waiting for me. His expression was serious, almost solemn. "We need to talk," he said as soon as I closed the door. I felt my heart race. Those 3 words rarely preceded anything positive. I sat on the edge of the bed, keeping some distance between us. "About what?" I asked, although I suspected the answer. Ricardo hesitated, his eyes fixed on a point beyond my shoulder. "About us. About this situation. This situation," I repeated. "You mean my cancer?" He made a vague gesture with his hand. "That, and everything that comes with it. How it's affecting our lives, our relationship." "I don't know how to say this," he began, finally looking directly at me. "But I need to be honest. Since the diagnosis, since the surgery, I don't feel attracted to me," I completed for him, the words coming out like stones. He lowered his eyes, confirming with his silence. After a moment that seemed eternal, he spoke again, his voice almost a whisper. "With this body, you no longer attract me." The words hit me like a physical blow. Even though I had suspected, even though I had noticed the signs, hearing the confirmation out loud was devastating. "With this body," as if I had chosen to change bodies, as if I had opted to have a mutilated breast. "I understand," was all I could say, my voice sounding strangely calm. "It's not just the scar," he continued. "It's all of it. The hospital, the doctors, the illness. It reminds me too much of my dad, those final months, all the suffering. I'm not dying, Ricardo," I said, a spark of anger finally igniting within me. "I'm in treatment. I'm fighting. I know," he hurried to say, "and I admire your strength, but I can't help feeling disgust," I suggested, the word coming out sharper than I intended. He recoiled as if he had been slapped. No, it's not disgust, it's fear, discomfort. I can't explain. What do you want, Ricardo? I finally asked. Time apart? Divorce? He seemed genuinely surprised by my direct question. No, I'm not talking about separation or divorce. I just wanted to be honest about how I'm feeling. I thought you deserved to know. Why? The question slipped out before I could contain it. So I can feel even worse? To ease your conscience? So we can face this together, he replied. So there are no lies between us. I almost laughed at the irony. Now he wanted to face this together. Not the cancer, not the treatment, but his own feelings of repulsion toward my altered body. I think I need to be alone for a bit, I said, getting up from the bed. I'm going for a walk. Sophia, please. He tried to stop me. I didn't mean to hurt you, but you did, I replied simply, grabbing a coat and leaving the room. 3. I spent almost 2 hours in a nearby park, absorbing the impact of Ricardo's words. I called Elena, my closest friend, and vented everything to her. She listened without judgment, offering the support I needed. Do you want me to come over to your place? She offered. No need, I responded, feeling calmer after sharing my feelings. I think I need to face this alone. When I got home, Donna Celia greeted me with a concerned expression, but she didn't ask any questions. Ricardo was in the office, the door closed. Part of me wanted to confront him, to continue the interrupted conversation. But another part, the part that was emotionally and physically exhausted, just wanted distance. I'm going to bed early, I informed Donna Celia. I'm not hungry. In the bedroom, I lay staring at the ceiling, mentally replaying the events of the day, the first radiotherapy session, Ricardo's words, the conversation with Elena. I don't know how long I stayed like that before I heard the bedroom door open softly. Ricardo came in, moving silently. I pretended to be asleep, keeping my breathing steady and my eyes closed. When he finally lay down, he kept the usual distance between us. There was no attempt to touch me, to check if I was really sleeping, to offer comfort or ask for forgiveness. Only the silence and the empty space between our bodies. The next morning, I woke up before him and quietly left the room. Mrs. Celia was already in the kitchen, preparing breakfast. Good morning, dear, she smiled. Did you sleep well? More or less, I replied, pouring myself a cup of coffee. What time is it? Almost 8. Ricardo has already left. I looked at her, surprised. Left? To where? To work? She replied, looking a little uncomfortable. He said he had an important meeting early today. He asked me to tell you that he might not be able to take you to radiotherapy. The information shouldn't have surprised me, considering our conversation the day before. Still, I felt a pang of pain. That's fine, I said, forcing a smile. I can take an Uber, like we talked about. Mrs. Celia hesitated. If you prefer, I can go with you. I don't have anything important to do today. I considered the offer. Part of me wanted to refuse, to prove that I could do this on my own. But another part, perhaps the wiser part, recognized that a bit of company would be welcome. I would like that, I finally admitted. Thank you, Celia. Mrs. Celia was a silent and comforting companion during the Uber ride to the hospital. At the radiotherapy reception, the same kind nurse from the day before greeted me with a recognizing smile. Good morning, Sophia. Second day, huh? How did you feel after yesterday's session? Good, I replied. I haven't noticed any side effects yet. Great, that's a good sign. Many patients only start to feel something after a few sessions. She looked at Mrs. Celia, who was standing next to me. Your mother? She asked politely. My mother-in-law, I corrected. Mrs. Celia. Nice to meet you, the nurse smiled. You can wait here in the waiting room. The session shouldn't take more than half an hour in total. Donna Celia nodded, gently squeezing my hand. I'll be here when you come out, dear. The procedure was similar to the previous day. While lying on the table, staring at the ceiling as the machine buzzed above me, I allowed my mind to wander. Not to Ricardo this time, but to myself, to the body he had rejected. This body had carried me for 51 years. It had grown, matured, adapted to different phases of life. It had conceived and given birth to our daughter Beatrice. It had danced, swum, run, loved. And now, this same body was fighting against rebellious cells that threatened its existence. How could Ricardo see only the scar, only the illness, only what had changed? How could he not see the strength, the resilience, the persistent beauty in every cell that kept fighting? "We're done for today, Sophia," came the voice of the technician Marta over the intercom. "You did great again." When I returned to the reception area, Donna Celia immediately stood up, a relieved smile on her face. "All good, dear?" "All good," I replied, and realized it wasn't just an automatic response. Despite everything, the diagnosis, the treatment, Ricardo's cruel words, I really was fine. Not perfect, not cured, not completely happy, but fine. Present, alive, fighting. On the way back home, Donna Celia suggested we stop for lunch at a restaurant I liked. "My treat," she insisted, "to celebrate your second day of treatment." During lunch, Donna Celia talked about my father-in-law, about how he had faced his own cancer years ago. "Pedro was a strong man," she said. "He never got seriously ill until the diagnosis. I think that made it all the harder for him to accept. And for Ricardo too," I commented, thinking about how my husband had mentioned his father. Donna Celia nodded slowly. Ricardo always idolized his father. Seeing him waste away like that, it was devastating for him. "He mentioned it yesterday," I confessed. "He said that seeing my illness reminds him of his father." She placed the fork on the table, her eyes meeting mine. "Did he talk to you about how he's feeling?" The question took me by surprise. "You knew?" "I suspected," she admitted, looking away. "I know my son. He was never good at dealing with fragility, not his own nor others. He said he doesn't feel attracted to me anymore," I revealed, the words coming out more easily than I expected. "Because of my body now. The scar." Donna Celia closed her eyes for a moment, a pained expression crossing her face. "Oh, Sophia, I'm so sorry. He shouldn't have. It's not fair to you." "No, it's not," I agreed. "But at least he was honest. I think I'd rather know the truth, no matter how painful it is." She reached across the table, covering my hand with hers. "You are an incredible woman, Sophia. Strong, beautiful, intelligent. If Ricardo can't see that now, it's his problem, not yours." Her words touched me deeply. It was as if she was giving me permission to feel hurt, to acknowledge the injustice of Ricardo's actions, without needing to defend him just because he was her son. "Thank you, Celia," I said, squeezing her hand, "for everything." She smiled, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Family isn't just blood, dear. It's also choice. And I choose you, no matter what happens between you and Ricardo." Thine pronounced for. On the third morning, I woke up with a new resolution. "I'll go alone today," I told Donna Celia during breakfast. Ricardo had already left again, departing before I even woke up. "Are you sure, dear?" Celia asked, concern evident on her face. "I'm sure," I replied, feeling a strange sense of power in this decision. I need to do this for myself. I called an Uber and, for the first time, entered the hospital alone for my radiotherapy session. In the waiting room, I observed the other patients, some accompanied by family members or friends, others alone like me. There was one woman in particular who caught my attention. She appeared to be around my age, maybe a bit older. She wore a colorful scarf on her head, suggesting she was undergoing chemotherapy. She was alone, reading a book, looking strangely serene. When our eyes met, she smiled, a gentle smile that reached her eyes. I smiled back, feeling a silent connection, the mutual recognition of those fighting similar battles. "Sophia Almeida," the nurse called, and I stood up. The woman with the colorful scarf gave a small wave as I walked past her, as if wishing me good luck. I returned the gesture, feeling strangely strengthened by that brief interaction. The session followed the usual protocol, but this time, while lying under the equipment, I felt something different. It wasn't resignation, nor fear, nor even calculated determination. It was a feeling of ownership. This was my body, my battle, my life. Regardless of what Ricardo thought or felt, regardless of who was by my side or not, I was here, present, fighting. When the session ended and I returned to the reception area, I noticed that the woman with the colorful scarf was still there. I hesitated for a moment, then approached her. "Hi," I said, suddenly feeling shy. "I just wanted to wish you good luck." She looked up, surprised, then smiled again. "Thank you. To you too. Is it your first cycle? Third day?" I replied, sitting in the chair next to her. "And you?" 35th, she said with a slight shrug. "Almost done. 2 more weeks and it's over." "Wow," I murmured, genuinely impressed. 7 weeks of treatment. "And do you come alone every day?" She nodded. "Most of the time, yes. My daughter comes with me when she can, but she works full-time and has 2 small children. I don't want to be a burden." "I understand," I said, thinking of Beatrice. It's hard to balance our needs with the concern of not overloading the ones we love. "Exactly," she agreed, extending her hand. "I'm Renata, by the way." "Sophia," I replied, shaking her hand. "Nice to meet you." We talked for a few more minutes until her name was called. We exchanged phone numbers before she headed to the preparation room, with a promise that we might grab a coffee together someday. I left the hospital that day with a feeling I hadn't experienced since the diagnosis. Hope. Not hope for a cure, although that was present too, but hope that, regardless of what happened to my marriage, my body, my life, I would find a way to rebuild myself, if necessary. The next few weeks established a new pattern. I went alone to the sessions, occasionally meeting Renata for a coffee. Ricardo remained distant, going to work early, coming back late, avoiding any discussion. We slept in the same bed, but the space between us seemed to grow every night. At home, I started making small changes. I reorganized my wardrobe, donating clothes that no longer fit my thinner body. I started wearing colorful scarves on my head, inspired by Renata, not to hide anything but as a form of expression. I planted small herbs in the kitchen window, basil, rosemary, mint, creating a little garden that was just mine. Beatrice, our daughter, called almost every day. I didn't tell her about the situation with Ricardo, not wanting to put her in the middle of our problems. "How's Dad?" she asked during a call. "He seems to always be busy when I call." "He's fine," I responded vaguely. "The Andrade project is demanding a lot from him." She murmured, not seeming convinced. "And is he going with you to the treatment sessions?" I hesitated. "Most of the time, I go alone. It's more practical that way, and the session itself is very quick." "I understand," she said. "Well, I'm planning to come home on the next holiday. I want to see how you are in person." The Marianne V. In the 4th week of treatment, something unexpected happened. When I arrived for my session, I found Ricardo in the waiting room, apparently waiting for me. "What are you doing here?" I asked, genuinely surprised. He seemed uncomfortable, almost shy. "I thought about accompanying you today. That is, if you don't mind." I was momentarily speechless. Part of me wanted to refuse, to say I was fine alone, but another part felt a small flame of hope kindling. "Sure," I finally replied. The session lasts about half an hour in total. He nodded, sitting next to me while I filled out the usual form. I noticed that, unlike the first session, his phone remained in his pocket. His attention was entirely on me, as if he were seeing me for the first time in weeks. When they called my name, I stood up, expecting him to say he would wait there. Instead, he got up too. "Can I go with you as far as allowed?" The question, the same one I had hoped to hear during that first session, took me by surprise. "If you want," I replied, trying to keep my voice neutral. He accompanied me to the door of the preparation room. "I'll be here when you come out," he said, and there was a seriousness in his voice that I couldn't help but notice. During the session, I reflected on Ricardo's reappearance. What had motivated this change? Guilt? Obligation? Or something more genuine? When I came out, he was exactly where he had promised, waiting patiently in the hallway. We walked side by side to the reception, an awkward silence between us. "Would you like to have a coffee?" he offered, indicating the small hospital cafe. "Or maybe have lunch somewhere." I considered the offer. "A coffee would be nice," I replied. In the cafe, we sat at a table near the window. Ricardo ordered 2 coffees, correctly remembering how I liked mine, with milk, no sugar. A small detail, but it touched me. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "With the treatment, I mean." "Physically, I'm fine," I replied honestly. "Some fatigue, especially in the afternoon. A bit of redness on the skin, but nothing serious." "And emotionally?" The question caught me off guard. Ricardo rarely asked about my feelings. "I'm coping," I replied carefully. "One day at a time." He lowered his eyes, a look of guilt crossing his face. "Sophia, I'm sorry for what I said that day, for the way I've been acting, for everything. I went to a therapist," he revealed, his voice low but firm. "I started 2 weeks ago. I'm trying to understand my fears, my reactions, why I said those horrible things to you. And is it helping?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Yes," he nodded. "It's making me see how selfish I've been, how unfair I've been to you, how I turned your suffering into something about me, about my fears." "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. "Because I want to make things right," he replied. "If it's still possible. If you're willing to give me a chance." I looked at him. Really looked, trying to see beyond the words, searching for sincerity in his eyes. What I saw was a genuinely regretful man, scared, trying to find his way back. "I don't know if it's that simple, Ricardo," I finally said. "You hurt me deeply, not just with your words, but with your actions. Or rather, your lack of action. When I needed you the most, you stepped away." "I know," he admitted, "and I have no excuses, just explanations maybe. Seeing you sick reminded me of how I lost my father, how helpless it was to watch someone I love suffer. And instead of facing that fear, I ran from it. I ran from you." His words touched something inside me. Not forgiveness, not yet, but understanding. "I understand the fear," I said softly. "I'm scared too, afraid of dying, afraid of suffering, afraid of losing parts of myself. The difference is I don't have the luxury to run. This is my body, my battle." "I know," he repeated, hesitantly reaching his hand over the table. "And I want to be by your side in this battle, if you still want me there." I looked at his extended hand, at the man who had broken my heart with cruel words, but who now seemed genuinely remorseful. "I don't know if I can trust you again," I admitted honestly. "I don't know if I can allow myself to be vulnerable with you, knowing how you reacted last time." "I understand," he nodded, retracting his hand. "I'm not asking for an immediate answer. I just wanted you to know that I'm trying to change. And what about my body? I asked. What about my scar? The changes the treatment caused? You said you weren't attracted to me anymore. He closed his eyes for a moment. It was cruel and unfair, he admitted. The truth is, I was scared, confused. I can't forgive myself for saying something so terrible. Then we remained silent for a moment, each absorbing the other's words. Finally, I said, I can't promise anything right now, Ricardo. I need time to finish my treatment, to heal, not just from cancer, but from what happened between us. But I appreciate this conversation, your honesty. He nodded, accepting my response without pressing for more. One day at a time, then? One day at a time, I agreed. During the last week of treatment, almost a month after that conversation in the cafeteria, things were different between us. Not perfect, nor completely resolved, but different. Ricardo accompanied me to sessions when he could, without my having to ask. When he couldn't, he sent messages asking how it had gone. Small gestures, but meaningful after so much absence. At home, we still maintained a certain physical distance, but meals were now shared, conversations more natural. He had continued with therapy, and I could see subtle changes in his behavior, in the way he communicated. On my last day of radiotherapy, Ricardo made sure to be present. When I came out of the treatment room, he was there, holding a small bouquet of tulips, my favorites. Congratulations, he said, offering me the flowers. You did it. Thank you, I replied, accepting the bouquet, touched by the gesture. We still have a long way to go, but it's an important milestone. One day at a time, he reminded. I looked at him, at the man who had hurt me deeply, but who now seemed to be genuinely trying to repair the damage. I didn't know if we could rebuild what had been broken, if he could really overcome his aversion to my altered body, if I could trust him again as a partner in sickness and in health. But for the first time in a long while, I felt something resembling hope. Not the naive hope that everything would go back to how it used to be. That was impossible. It was a more cautious hope, the possibility of building something new. One day at a time, I agreed, and together we left the hospital, heading towards an uncertain future that now seemed to contain at least the possibility of healing, not just for my body, but perhaps, eventually, for us.